Hello, welcome to Time Bandit Watches, and today we're going to be looking at this Seiko diver's watch, also known as an SKX009. So the movement came to me as a non-runner, albeit you can see it ticking away. I believe that looks a bit, the dial feet are broken, and I think the rotor weight might be loose as well, so we're going to go ahead, take the bracelet off and find out. So we've taken the bracelet off, and let's open the case back up. I've already loosened this a little bit. Let's find out what's going on. Okay, so the rotor weight doesn't look loose, so it's not too bad. Let's let's take the movement out of the case. So on these, there's a small button or lever. If you push on the dimple there, it lifts up the lever, and the movement and the stem and crown can come out. And then I believe, there we go, it's just a case of turning it over. So as you can see, yep, the dial feet look like they're broken, which, yeah, there's one, and the other one's in there somewhere, so we're gonna have to look at reattaching the dial feet, which as a amateur watch repairer is a first time for me, so that will certainly be interesting. So the dial just pops straight off. You can see the other dial foot just there. You can start disassembly. You have to be careful. I think what I'll do first, so if I take the rotor weight off, it should sit in the day disc on. There's slight chamfers on either edge, so here and here you can just about get hand levers in there to get that off. It's not the easiest thing. Now we can go ahead and pull the plastic movement ring off. It's just pressed on there. Usually just you can gently push that out. There we go. just got 3 lines on it. You have to turn it to the right to loosen it up because it's a left hand thread. Now we can let the movement down. Just put a little bit of pressure on the main spring. You see the click here, and just gently let that slide in your fingers. And just for good measure, before we start dismantling the going train, take this ratchet wheel off. Feels like this movement's never been apart before, so I could guess as well that it's never been serviced, and that's probably part of the reason for why it's not running. I think the reason it probably stopped was the dial. Now we can get the movement off to the parts cleaner. So while the parts are in the parts cleaner, there's a couple of bits I wanted to do. So the bezel insert's looking kind of old, so I managed to pick up this nice new bezel insert, original Seiko made. Also picked up a new crystal, Seiko crystal. So first thing we're going to do while we're here is we're going to take the bezel off. So there's a couple of ways to do this. If you've got a bezel removal tool, I think with this one there's possibly easier. So you can get your fingernail in the gap and just get the bezel to lift off that tiny little bit, and then probably slightly controversially, the end of a strap tool, just gently get it in there, and there you go. Bezel pops right off. No real risk of damaging anything. The bezel comes off. It's worth doing this just so you can get underneath and also give the bezel a good clean out. There's lots of dirt and gunk in here. At the same time, you can pull out the bezels. This spring, this is what makes your bezel click. So you can see those small like raised parts of the spring. They sit in the dimples within the bezel, and obviously give you that ratcheting motion. So we're going to move the bezel over to one side. You should be able to push the crystal out. We may need a crystal press for this, but yeah, I think we're going to have to put that in a press. So I'm going to go away, put that in a press, and show you what. So there we can see the crystal's now out. It's got quite a few scratches and stuff on it, so that'll be replaced. The old gasket, again, that'll be replaced, and then the chapter ring, we'll put that to one side. That will go back in. So I'm going to go ahead, just clean up the case slightly. You see there's all gunk and dirt and stuff in there. Obviously no point taking it apart if I'm not going to clean it as well, so we might as well go ahead and do that now. So you can see I've gone ahead and cleaned up the case. We've got the new gasket, we've also got a new crystal, and now fortunately the chapter ring, so there's a small indent in the case just there on top of the case. You can just about see it. That lines up with a pin on the back of the chapter ring, just sits in nicely and lines the chapter ring up. And all we need to do is place the new gasket in, and then we can put the new crystal on. Go ahead and push that in with a case press. You can see we've pressed the new crystal in. It's seated quite nicely, and now we've not got we haven't got any more scratches. So next thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove the bezel insert and replace that. We remove the bezel insert from the case. Obviously bezel inserts on the top. It's a little dirty, so we're going to go ahead and clean that up. One thing to note on these, or this particular model, is in here there's an O-ring. Now you're going to want to replace that if that's old, and that's going to let water through. But obviously don't forget to look at that as well. So I'm just going to go away and clean up the this bezel. Now getting the bezel off is fairly easy. They're not that strong, but there is an adhesive underneath. The easiest way I find is just get a screwdriver and just gently push the bit of pressure on from the underside. You can see there's a bit of a lip there, albeit this one's got so much gunk in it that you can't see that there's a lip there, so we'll get rid of that first. So now you can see there's a lip in there. It's just a case of working that lip until all the adhesive's been broken off, but you can hear it. Again, I'm not that fussed about this particular insert. Now, once you get so far, you can stick your screwdriver the whole way through. So now I'll take the screwdriver out, just because you don't want to damage the bezel if possible. So now I'm just going to use my fingers. You can see all the adhesive in there. There we go, that's out of the way. And it's just a case of removing all the old adhesive. Now you've got all that off, what I'm going to go and do now is just go and clean the bezel up, just so it's 100% clean for when we're going to stick that on, and then the underside's also clean as well for when it goes back on the case. So now we've got the movement back from the parts cleaner, we can go ahead and start reassembly. So the first thing I'm going to do is start putting the centre wheel in. I have put a new mainspring in. That was probably one of the issues behind it not running. Reassemble the going train. I'm going to start with the barrel, not forgetting the click, which sits in between this post here and this block, and goes into a small hole just here. I'd already gone ahead and reassembled the barrel bridge, going train bridge, with the reversing wheel, and I've already gone ahead and oiled the jewels as well, so we can go ahead and put that on. The main, this plate here where the reversing wheel is, you can see that there's a small C-clip under the bottom, and that just holds that assembly in place. And then once we've done that, go ahead making sure that reversing wheel goes into the hole correctly, and that the click doesn't sit underneath the bridge. There we go. And put some screws in to just steady the bridge a little bit for when we locate the pivots. Yeah, we've been lucky that time, and the plates drop straight back in, so we can go ahead and tighten these up. And now we're going to go ahead, just again, just quick visual check on everything. Everything looks okay. We can go ahead And now we can go ahead and put the balance wheel on and check if the work carried out has corrected the fault. Now it's working. Some minor adjustment to be made, of course, on the timing machine and all the upper balance jewel, but we look all good to go, and we can carry on and assemble the top side of the movement and put the watch back together. Now before we go any further, we need to make sure we consider adding the movement ring in. Ideally this would be done right before I put the movement in the case, but we have to do it now. I've already timed the watch because with the plastic around the movement sometimes get some unusual readings. So all you have to do is line the two. All you have to do is line these two dial feet holes up in the right place, and then be mindful of where the balance wheel is. Just gently pinch that back into place. It's fairly easy and it's obvious once it's in. And now you can put it back in the movement holder, but just remember, just lightly tighten that up so that you're not putting any excess pressure on that movement ring. So now you can continue putting the date wheel on, and then the day wheel. Now remember, when you're putting this plate on, this part of the date change wheel here needs to go on top. Now what we can do is just test that by pulling the crown out. Okay, and we can go ahead, put the day wheel on. Easiest way I've found to get this in place is just just to rotate the wheel backwards slightly, and then it just clicks into place. And finally, just want to get that C-clip in. So I've gone ahead and put the dial back on the movement. I managed to get the dial feet reattached. It was okay. It was fairly fiddly, but I didn't manage to get it on video. So I think if I have to do that again, I'll try and make a thing about making sure that's on video. But for now, we're going to go ahead, put the hands on the watch, and starting with making sure that the date change happens in the correct place. So now the hands are on, it's time to go ahead and put the movement back in the case. We'll put the rotor weight on, but I'll do that when it's in the case. It's just that little bit easier with that plastic movement ring. So pretty simple. Ideally you want a casing cushion. Just drop the movement, the case over the movement. Flip it upside down, and there you go. You can put the crown in. Make sure it screws down. You know you're good to go. All feels okay. Now we can go ahead and get the rotor weight on. Looks good. And then gonna go away, get a new gasket, and we can put the case back on. But for now, just gonna put the case back on for safety more than anything else. And now we can look at continuing. And now we can look at continuing with the bezel, getting the new bezel insert on. So I've cleaned the clicks, the bezel spring up. That just sits in. There's a couple of tabs there. And we can go ahead. Again, remembering that you want to make sure that the O-ring is. Make sure you've got a new one of those, and I've just put some silicone grease on it as well. It's easy, you just slot that inside, and then it should just go straight back into the gap that it came from. Okay, now that's all in. And then it's just a case of, doesn't really matter where to start with, putting it on. You should be able to just There we go. Push the bezel on, and then it's just double check that it moves around and locks okay. If you did have a bezel that was, the click was like really loose, you can either replace the spring or maybe just move the tabs up slightly so that they just put a little bit more pressure on the bezel. And now what we're going to do is look at getting the new bezel insert into the movement. Sometimes with the old bezel insert, the little pip at the top here doesn't always come off. Doesn't always come out with the bezel insert, and you can lose those. And sometimes your new bezel insert won't come with one. But all you need to do now is just, again, I just want to double check the fitment, make sure it's everything fits okay. Now everything, we should be pretty much ready to go. I'm going to use some crystal cement for this. I think there's some all sorts of different contact adhesives and multi-purpose glues and all sorts of stuff that you can use for this, but I think this contact adhesive is going to be okay. So I'm just going to apply that, and then it'll give me a fair amount of time to make sure that the bezel's in the right place. And typically with the Seiko, the chapter ring and the dial don't actually line up either, so it's just selecting which one I want the bezel to line up with. But we'll have a look at that when the insert's on. We can go ahead and put the bezel insert on. I think I'm going to try and line that up with the dial. And then just give it a general push all the way around to make sure that it's seated nicely. Remembering that glue's got to go off. You can see swatch is back to looking like brand new again, apart from maybe a couple of minor bits here and there. Now we've got one last thing left to do, which is to go ahead and put the new gasket on the case back, and then go ahead and tighten the case back up. So there we have the complete service of the Seiko 7S26A movement, along with replacing the crystal and the bezel insert. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit subscribe. I do plan in the future on doing a modded SKX007 or SKX Seiko. I'm thinking about maybe going for something a bit different, case material wise, and yeah, we'll see how that turns out. And I'll hope you like it, and see you next time.